Okay, right. We're 2 minutes in, so let's get started because if other people join us, we will let them in and we'll make good progress. Today is about doing some work. It's about looking at actions. Okay, it's about looking at the quarterly dynamics and turning those dreams that we've been working on all the way through, all the way from that bottom level of sales, all the way up to legacy, and turning those dreams into reality. Yes, this is supported by the Productivity Program and the University of Lincoln, and I strongly suggest that you all reach out to them and get the help that you need. Just because you've had digital vouchers, grants, and other schemes doesn't mean that you also can't take advantage of other things that are from the Productivity Program as well. Questions, if you have any questions, I've got the chat box open here, which is really good because I've only got one place to look. So please open the chat box and ask any questions as we go through. The other thing I would say is that you do need to make lots of notes today. This is about actions. But what I'd also like to do, if you're able to, and I've only just thought about it because of the session I've just come from, what I'd like you all to do is to have some post-it notes. Okay, so if you've got any to hand, please go and grab them. If you haven't got them to hand, don't worry, we can use paper. But if you've got some post-it notes, because what I want you to do as we go through today, I want you to capture ideas. And I want you to, and I'm sorry I'm holding it up to the screen here. I'm going to have to get myself back up on screen so I can't see. What I want you to do on the post-it note is, you can see my handwriting here, right at the top, put the title of strategy or action. Okay. Then I want you to do three things. What money would you make from implementing this action? What money would you save? And what is the impact going to be on your business? So when you get that blinding flash of the obvious as we go through today, I want you to have loads of post-it notes. Okay. Somebody in the session earlier on today that I was on had 3. I had 15 of these. Although there were proper cards, I haven't had time to have cards printed. So what the title of the idea is, what the action is that you're going to take, how much money that will make you, how much money that will save you, and because we're in legacy at the moment, what impact will that have? And then right at the bottom, I want you to put when you're going to do it. I want you to say, is it going to be within the next week, the next month, or the next quarter? Or is it not now? Okay. So just a little bit of something to help you get more from this workshop feel that we've got today. So, and I'd love to know how many post-it notes you've got as we go through this. So while you're thinking more about those post-it notes, and good to see everybody on here, I'm just going to, for the purpose of background noise, I'm just going to mute you all up here. But what I would say is if there is anything that you want to jump in, if there is anything you want to ask or that you want to say, just take yourself off of mute, okay? Just take yourself off of mute and ask the question, say what you've got to say. We will all learn by doing this together. So we're going back to a little bit about planning, okay, and about actions. And I want you to think about a couple of questions here before we start this session. Why do most plans fail or stall? Okay, and this is a rhetorical question because I can tell you from all my years of experience in my own businesses and in working with other people in whatever kind of programs, whether it's group one-to-ones, whatever it is, most plans fail or stall because of lack of action. You can blame the reasons for lack of action on fear, procrastination, change, all those other things. But most plans fail or stall because people don't take action. So if you learn only one thing from today, if you want to achieve your dreams, if you want to work through your plans, the most important thing is to keep taking steps forward. Don't stop. Don't have to be big steps. They can be teensy wincy little steps, but as long as action is being taken. And I want you to think about, just to bring this home, how many plans have you created where you've not reached your goals? Yeah, how many New Year's resolutions? Because I'll give you an idea. One year I decided on New Year's Day that my New Year's resolution would be to learn to ride a unicycle. Okay, not one of my best New Year's resolutions, but the day after I went out and I bought a unicycle. That's the action. Okay, but there's so many times when I've created those plans, I've created those resolutions, but then I've not done the action. And you say, oh, I'll get it at the end of the week. I'll get it the next day. And then what happens over time, you don't reach your goals because you don't take the actions. Okay, so think about plans that you've created, but then you've not reached your goals. I use a document which I've shared in other webinars called the one-page strategic plan. I've set goals. I set goals when I was 25 years old for when I was 50. And I beat every single one of those 5 goals that was on that list by 10 years. I achieved every single one of those goals when I turned 40 instead. So, and I did that because I took action. And that, I'm not bragging about that. It was a very simple process of taking action. And that's what I want you today. These post-it notes are your actions. You can put them up on the wall. You can put them on your computer screen, anywhere that they'll stick. Whatever you do, whether you're writing it on paper, it's about taking action. And of course, today is about turning your dreams, your vision, into reality. So I want you to just take 1 minute just to remind yourself what your vision is. It might be a business vision. It might be a personal vision. It might be what you want to do when the business has gone on, because we're talking about legacy. It could be when you've got your family that are taking over the business. It could be when you've exited the business. It could be when you've got investment into the business. It could be just when you're carrying on doing what you've always wanted to do. But just remind yourself of what it is, that vision, that dream that you want to achieve. Because unless we know where we're heading, we've got to start with the end in mind. We've got to know what it is that we're heading towards. So I want you to write that down and just remind yourself what that is. Just jot it down. Again, make it as real as possible. You know, if you want to buy a car, you've got to say what color, what engine, what model. How big a boot do I need to put my dogs in, my 3 dogs? You know, every car we buy, we always have to work out the boot space first. And I must have, I don't know if anybody else has got an uneconomical car, but because of boot size, I've probably got one of the most uneconomical cars on this webinar. My car gets about 17 miles to the gallon. But it's got a huge boot for my dogs, which is the most important thing. So what's your vision, your dream? And think about the legacy. You know, what kind of impact do you want that vision, that dream to have on people? Because you need to put emotion into it. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're working on. We're trying to create permanence. That vision should be something that feels like it goes on beyond your significant input into the business. And I use that word significant because you might still have some input. You might still be the chairman or the whatever fancy titles you want to give yourselves, chief visionary officer and all that kind of stuff. But you know, it's about perhaps you still want to have some input into the business, but not a significant amount of input into the business as we've talked about before. So just while you're finishing off there, that vision, this is the 3rd in the 3-part current series. I use the word current. I would love the university to do this at some time, perhaps in the summer, and do a different version. And if there's any topics that you would like to have me talk about, I'm pretty sure you're all aware I can talk about much of the muchness now in business. But if there's a topic that you want covering by the productivity program and by the university, reach out to them. They'll get me or somebody else to put it on for you. And from today, there is no other webinar. The next step, the next, I suppose, way forward for you is for you to take action. Okay, and that's why I'm really want you to understand this. Okay, we've talked about how we can adapt. We've talked about the need to ongoing adapting our business. We've talked about business continuance and community continuance. And today we're talking about those quarterly dynamics. And this leads on to the next question. That's one of my favorite images, by the way. I use that image on quite a few things. Does your business now have a clear vision for its future? But this is what today is about. Dynamically adjust quarterly to make that vision. If you do not get your vision, your mission, and your plans of how you're going to get there out at least every quarter, and I'm going to give you a quick caveat to that in a moment, then you're not moving that plan forward. Every single quarter, you need to be reviewing your vision, your mission, and your plans. Now, sometimes a quarter is too long, and it feels like when you get to that quarter that you're tired by it. Okay. If any of you ever feel like that, and you feel that 90 days is you're setting too big goals, you're setting things that are too lofty that just aren't getting done, break it down into a 6-week cycle. So what I like to do is I like to do 6 weeks of doing stuff, then a 2-week cool down, then another 6 weeks of doing stuff, and a 2-week cool down. And the 2-week cool down is about taking some time for myself. It's about catching a breath. It's about reviewing. It's about checking in. It's about celebrating the successes. So if 90 days, if quarterly feels too much, think about that alternative cycle. 6 weeks doing, focusing, getting the actions done, 2-week cool down, 6 week, 2-week, 6 week. I think it was one of the British cycling teams. It was a cycle that they do. The CRM system, Salesforce, it's something that they do as well. They call it sprints. I'm not so much of a sprinter, to be honest, but 6 weeks and 2 weeks works well for me. Another thing that works quarterly and every 90 days, and this is why it happens, is advertising. If you want to keep in front of your prospects, if you want to keep in touch with people, never let it go beyond 90 days. If you ever pay close attention to any kind of advertising, whether it's TV advertising, press advertising, those that got big budgets will be on regularly. But very often you will see a car manufacturer disappear and they won't advertise for a while. You'll notice Audi, you stop seeing Audi adverts, but within 90 days, they're back on our screens. So the importance of today is to realize that there is a cyclical need to work through our plans and go through our actions. Okay, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we do that, I just want to go through a few things. I tried to look at what dynamic meant, and I kept coming up with definitions. Every time I tried to get Alexa to give me a definition, I've got to be careful how loud I say that. But dynamite was what kept coming up. And dynamite obviously comes from some Latin version of dynamic, and I'm sure anybody with a Greek background will probably echo that as well. But what I want you to think about is quarterly, first of all, is a proven rhythm and timing. If it doesn't work for you, then go less. Do not go more. Do not go beyond that quarterly timing. I want to remind us all that goals without action are just goals. Okay, goals that you set without any action behind them will always just stay as goals. And even worse, they'll just become dreams and they'll feel so far away that you can't touch them. So we need to think about action. And dynamic, I love the definition of this. I'm gonna have to move you all out of the way a second while I just read this out because it's really important. Dynamic, in my dictionary that I found, is defined as a force or energy that produces motion. And the word here for me in this particular definition was producers. I'm watching a TV series on Netflix at the moment called Snowpiercer, if any of you watch it, where they talking about this perpetual engine that's sending people around the world as the world's all frozen up. But dynamic actually has its own momentum. Dynamite, when you light that fuse, unless you snuff that fuse out, the explosion's going to happen. So that's what it's got to feel like. Your actions not only have got to be taken, but they've got to feel like they've got a power, a force, an energy of their own. Okay. They shouldn't be something that you have to keep beating with a stick to keep it going. Being dynamic should be something that keeps everything going, that perpetual motion. Okay, so quick bit of worksheet. I'd like you to get a piece of paper, draw this table landscape, and we've got 3 columns. Left-hand column has the word being across it. Second one has at and going. So in the being, I want you to think about your notes. I want you to think about what you've worked on in previous webinars. And some of you I know have joined us fairly recently. Some of you have been here since the very first one. So thank you to those that have stayed with it. But I want you to think about things that have been in the past, okay? Things that perhaps you did 12 months ago. Think about 12 months ago. It's hard to think that far back, isn't it? You know, anniversary of lockdown. I should have been going skiing 12 months as of yesterday. So think that far back. But where have you been? Okay. And I want you to write some things down that you felt as we've been going through these webinar series that you needed to change. So in that being column, you don't need just 3 rows. You can put as many rows in as you want. I want you to write down at least 3 things where you have been. Is it that you've been frustrated with your team? Is it that you have been, driving forward with your lead generation? Is it that you've been undergoing change for productivity? Is it that you've been working on your succession, your legacy? So where have you been over the last 12 months? What have you been working on? Okay. And I want you to write down as many as you can in that column. And this is where I get a sip of my honey and lemon. So where have you been? So for me, I've been developing some online courses. I've been creating these webinars. I've been working really, really hard, over-delivering with all my existing clients who have been doing exceptionally well in the last 12 months and have all been handling the growth that they've had. So where have you been? I've been struggling with my IT. My office does not look the same as it did 12 months ago, trust me. I've got UPS power units, backup data boxes, all sorts of weird and wonderful things. So where have you been? Then I want you to think for each one of those in the middle column, where are you at right now with that? Are you, I'm just going to put my laptop in here. Are you happy with it? Are you a 50% point? Where are you on the progress? Where are you at for each one of those things that you've written down? Of course, you get access to the recording of this from the university and the YouTube channel. You can always pause it. This is a good one to pause it and fill this in. So where are you at? And think about how you feel about where you're at the moment. What's working? What's not working? What's going okay? What's not going so well? Where are you at with the things? And then over in the final right-hand column, where are you going with it? So I'm trying to get you just to get that mind thinking. I think all of these webinars, when we're thinking about planning, we're thinking about actions, we need to get our brains engaged in that forward thinking, that dynamic mode. Because what we're trying to do here, dynamic is motion. So we're going from where we've been, we're looking at where we're at now, and we're starting to look at where we're going. Tom needs to work out what he's going to spend his digital voucher on if he hasn't done already. And there's going to be some actions for that. So that's where he's going. Might be the capital grant. So where are you going? Now, if any of you would like to share where you're going, I would love to know in the chat box anything that you have in there where you're going, because I'd love to perhaps work on that a little bit more. We might go we're certainly going to deliver all the content in the usual hour. If there's anybody that wants any help working with any of this, I'm happy to stop on for another 5-10 minutes afterwards to either answer any questions that you might have, any hot topics, but also to work on this a little bit more. So please show me that you're alive. I can see you all alive because I can actually see you all today. Heads down, which is always good, but type it in the chat box. Is there one that you really, really are proud about, that is where you're going, what you're pleased about, or is there one that you're struggling to get going? Okay, Joe, potentially moving towards becoming part of a group structure and an organizational merger. Wow, okay, that sounds intriguing, doesn't it? I like that. Okay. Anybody got anything else of where you're going? Because what we're going to talk about in the next few slides is making sure that you're doing something, you're taking actions that review where we're at, and actions that move us closer. I have something that I work with people called a tactical marketing plan, which we list all the tactics. But having a tactic to generate leads of social media, for example, or networking is great. But if you have no actions below it, then it will go nowhere. With my coach some years ago, I had a tactic of sending out postcards to get people to a face-to-face event when we could do face-to-face events, and I wasn't getting the results. And he said, what's going wrong? Why aren't your postcards working? And I said, easy, haven't sent them out yet. And he said, well, why haven't you sent them out yet? Well, I haven't actually ordered them yet. Well, why haven't you ordered them? Well, I haven't designed them yet. And that's the kind of process I want you to think about today. If we just focus on the getting results from the cards, that doesn't help me. If I focus on getting the cards out, what's stopping me getting the cards out? What action is it I need to do to get the cards out? Well, I need to order the cards. If I'm going to order the cards, I need to design the cards. So I want you to wind back to get the lowest common denominator of actions. So for each of those in the being, at, and going row, I want you to start writing down some actions. Now, it might be that you think, right, that's a key action. If it's a key action, write it down on your Post-it note. If you do it, how much money will it make you? How much money will it save you? What kind of impact will it have on the business? And when am I going to do it by? So to do our quarterly dynamics, we need to review actions that move us towards that objective. So for each one of those, just scribble over the piece of paper or write on your Post-it notes what actions need to be taken. Have a think about it. This is a workshop. I'm not just going to sit here talking about it. David's put here, being. That's good. Thinking about exit strategy, exit options. Great. Going, management buying, and partial sell to partner. That will do all back office. Great. So what actions, David and Joe, and thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. What actions need to move you from where you're at? What actions are now? Because if you're going to put those actions on your Post-it note, these are quick actions. And what are the actions that need to keep you going? Get towards that going section, get you towards that management buy-in and partial sale to a partner so they can do all that back office stuff. What are the actions you need to take? Think about it, review it. So I've got something in my eye here. Now for each one of those rows, I also want you to think about KPIs, key performance indicators. You can't do anything unless you measure and monitor and know that you're on track. We've done all that in the previous webinars. So I want you to think of at least one key performance indicator which would show you that the actions that you've listed down are working. Not 5, not 6 KPIs for each row, just pick one key performance indicator that would show you that the going is working, or that you're moving from at, because we're trying to move you across. What's my cursor? We're trying to move you across from at to going. So we're taking you out of the at. We know we're already at the at. So now we're going between at and going. I'm sorry for the oversimplification here. So I'm not a big person with words, so I use simple words. But hopefully you get the gist of it. What KPIs? So anybody else got anywhere that they're going that they want to share in the chat box? So yeah, Jackie B. Doing too much work, not being able to focus. At employed someone else to focus on the work. Business increasing and still can't pull back from doing the work. Okay. You need to read the book Clockwork on that one. Mike McAllowitz. Going, may need to take on additional personal on. Yeah. Okay. I think, yeah. So it's, I suppose it's understanding, again, if you're going to look at recruiting, how much will that make you? Will it save you any money? Probably not, because you've got the cost of employing somebody. It might save you time, but what kind of impact is it going to have? And the key KPI is, perhaps you need to do a time study, Jackie. And okay, how much time has the current person that I've just set on, how much time have they saved? How much money have they added? What's been their return on investment? Because why recruit somebody the same as somebody you've already recruited when that person hasn't yet realized a return on investment? Yeah, I did some work with somebody about 5 or 6 years ago, and she was obsessed about growing the number of people in the business, yet kept employing people, and then got to the point where she couldn't pay herself a single penny out of the business in salary because she got to pay everybody else, because none of them were actually bringing anything else into the business particularly. They weren't giving a return on investment. So that's what I mean by measuring and monitoring. What return on investment is that person bringing? Frank, going world-class manufacturing goal, i.e. 85% every day. World-class manufacturing, great. So KPIs, just let's be 100% clear on that, might be a number, could be a metric. It can be a yes or a no. Have I done it? Achieved it? Yes. No. Might be a work in progress. The other thing is, some people often say to me, oh, you can't put a KPI to everything. I disagree. Okay. Because you can always put a happiness factor to anything. How happy am I with this? On a scale of 1 to 5, am I frowny face, which is a 1, to happy face as a 5? I can do that to every single part of my business. You can do it to every single part of your business. You can score it on a happiness score, 1 to 5. Doesn't have to be accurate. Of course, if there are accurate parts, you know, Frank's mentioned 85% there. That's great. And I'm going to give you one more thing to think about before I open it up to anybody that's got any questions or any thoughts or any other comments. Each of these actions that you're listing down, so it might be on your post-it note, might be on a sheet of paper, the quarterly dynamics, because we're going to be reviewing these every quarter or every 6 weeks if you go for the 6-week, 2-week cycle. But the first thing, and this falls into what some of you that are delegating out there are talking about, is who's going to do it and by when. And if you go down that list and your name is at the side of most of them, that might be because there's nobody else in the business. That's fine. But then I want you to think about it. Who else might do it? Who could I perhaps outsource it to? And is that task worth the amount of money that I'm get paid per hour, my salary? Okay, so by who and by when? Because we need to at least keep that motion going. And the way to keep motion going is to set deadlines, set targets. Colin has put here, been reviewing marketing strategy. He's at what others are doing, which we're not doing. That's an interesting one. And where you're going, boosting followers on social media, driving increased visibility and revenue. Yeah, so what kind of actions do you need to take to boost your followers? You know, is it organic? Is it paid for? You know, how are you driving increased visibility? Is it keywords? Is it content rich? So yeah, what kind of actions do you need to do? So hopefully now you've all got a set of being, at, and goings. Either on that piece of paper you've scrolled across actions and you have got your post-it notes. For each of those actions, by who and by when. Who's going to do it, by who and by when, and how am I going to measure the success of it? Okay. And the idea of the dynamic of this is to keep that going. And don't be afraid of failing. Okay. If Edison had have failed on about attempt number 200 and something, we would be in a very dark world right now, wouldn't we? And a quiet world. It's about pushing forward. I always like the quote, but a lot of people sort of kick back against it. If you shoot for the stars and achieve the moon, then you've done pretty well. You've got to be careful because those kind of targets can be destructive. But what I want you to do is, I would rather you set tiny targets, tiny steps, and keep that dynamic going than big lofty targets and see it as too far away. I had a fellow coach who struggled with big lofty goals, and what she did, she on the back of her door, she got some flip chart paper and she put the big lofty goal at the top, and then she put footprints all the way up the door, from the bottom of the door, from the floor all the way to the top of the door, and in each of the footprints she put an action, and what she focused on was the footprints to get to the summit. Because yes, she needs to remind herself of where she was heading, which is our mission and our vision, which is what we're going to talk about in a second. But what she felt she needed more of was the actions on the footsteps. And each of those footsteps had a set of things that she would do in it. And she then visually saw she was one step closer. So anybody got anything they want to share? Anybody got anything they want to take themselves off mute, ask, question, issues, problems you get in the way? Who should you be reviewing this with? This is a meeting format, so we can take ourselves off mute and ask any questions. Anybody got anything that they want to say or ask? And this is where it goes really quiet. Normally do this at the end. Tom, I love the way you put your hand up there. That's great.
Just at school. See, I'm finding my big issue at the moment is during this lockdown, I have done a lot of, your course has been fantastic, and I've done marketing courses and stuff like this. And, when we're talking about the actions, problem I'm having is I've done so much behind the scenes. And obviously, because the doors are closed, I feel like I'm stuck in the box. Like I feel like a greyhound. I'm in the box. I've got things set up. I need the data. I need to be back at work before I can start the next stage. I feel like, is that me making excuses, or is that there? Because I've done that many changes that and implemented that many things. I don't want to start them doing something not knowing the other ones work. I need some validation that's worked. So I am in limbo, and I'm finding it hard. When I'm sat here, I'm looking at what I've done over the last year, and I've done an awful lot and changed the business so much. Yeah. But then I'm also need to see them changes come to fruition, if that makes sense.
And I bet, and I can see lots of nodding heads here on the screen, which is again a good reason to see people. And I think you're absolutely right, Tom, that you're not on your own. I think we've all been there, and some of us are there right now. And I've got a product board just slightly behind me there that's full of stuff, and you can feel not just like a greyhound in the box, but it's all that pent up energy can be quite overwhelming, can't it? It can be quite toxic as well. From an athlete, if you build up all that protein, all those carbs and everything else, you've got to release it. You've got to do something, otherwise you become that caged animal that just doesn't know which way to go, and you come out that cage like chaos. Okay, absolute chaos. And I've seen people do that. So it's a really, really good question and a really good point, and I think everybody will take value from us talking through that. I think the biggest thing is to think about focuses. So as you sit in the box, think about the next focus. Don't think about all of the things. Think about what is the next thing that I can focus on. And I always have a sort of Kung Fu Panda moment of work on the next big easy, particularly as you're coming, to the point where you can start opening up. What is the biggest, easiest thing that I can do first? Don't try and do all of it.
Yeah.
Pick the biggest, easiest thing to do. The thing that we'll use, and the reason I say biggest, because it needs to be something to use some of that energy and some of that content that you've done. But it also needs to be something that is a very easy first step, because, mission to the moon, when Neil Armstrong stepped out, that first step was the easy step. It was the most historic step. The rest of the stuff, does anybody ever know what happened after that step and where they went and what they did and what they put up and all the samples? Really, really important for everybody else in NASA. But the first thing you've got to focus on is that first step. So pick that first big easy, focus on it. And this is where I was saying about what works for me. Quarterly dynamics, which is the topic of this, is absolutely, I review everything every 90 days very formally. But I try to work through in those 6-week cycles, 6 weeks rest, 2 weeks, then 6 weeks. And I think for you, Tom, at the moment, and for a lot of people on here, we do, because of the current circumstances, perhaps need to spend the first 6 months of this year, perhaps even to the end of this year, doing more regular reviews, quarterly at the most. But do the small things, get the actions doing, review regularly, monitor, and tweak. I used to call myself a master tweaker because I love taking things and just tweaking them a little bit. It's not about waiting till it goes completely off rails and then trying to whack it back on, little things. But I think everybody will say that they feel like you, Tom. Is there something that you can think of that you could have as that first big easy step as you open the gates? Perhaps something even before you open that you could do and test.
Well, we kind of worked out. Obviously, we've got a confirmation of the digital grants, and that gives me, because obviously we're now 2.5 weeks before we go back, so that gives me a lot more focus. Also, we've just won an award, Lux Life Salon, Lincolnshire Salon of the Year.
Right, well done.
So that gives us, that's actually probably made me less restless and less caged, because there is something I can now focus on.
Yep.
But, we've just done so much, and, I don't know if everyone else feels like this, because a lot of this is new to me. You just want to get a few little easy wins in there and little celebrations. And, with what's happening, we've not had that. So I've had no validation of what I've done is correct.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. But you have got not just the award to celebrate. I think each of you, everybody on this webinar and any other webinars that you've been on, we have to actually recognize where you're at. And that's why I like that sort of column at. And okay, some of it might not be quite so well and some of it might be better. But to be in that middle column is a success. And normally we probably wouldn't celebrate that too much. But just the fact that we know where we're at and we've got a view of where we're going, every single one of you on here should go out and buy a cream cake or whatever your sort of sin is, and you should do something to celebrate, because it is those easy wins and those celebration of those successes that we need to celebrate more of. And I think, we forget the big celebrations. Let's do the small celebrations. Let's just go out and buy a cream cake. Yeah, I think that would be a great thing to do. And it's to finish off on that, Tom. I think it's, if you can pick just 2 or 3 focuses and try and put them into one sort of big easy win, then that definitely is a place to start. It's about focusing it step by step. But you're not on your own. Has anybody got anything else that they want to add to that or anything else about getting started and working out how to get this dynamism going? But I think for you, Tom, certainly, I would certainly recommend, because you've been shut down for so long, as many other people might be, more regular reviews. Think about that 6 weekly review process rather than a quarterly process. I think that will serve you really well. And little step. Don't do big things every 6 weeks. Just do something that's achievable and something that's manageable and moves you forward. Anybody got anything else? Yep, Jackie?
Yeah.
Sorry for other people putting your hand up. I can't see everybody all at the same time here.
So just from my point of view, I totally get where Tom's coming from, but I don't need to have a place of work to run my business. So problem I've got is just so many ideas, so many things I want to push forward with, and I can, because I don't need to be here, there, or anywhere. I can do it from my office, and I just get frustrated when the phone's constantly ringing, and I'm supporting my clients, and I'm taking new clients on, and I just never seem to get to that point where I can actually make the plans. I can action the plans, and that's sort of what I was getting to, where I was at. And I've taken on someone else, as they're part-time at the moment, and they've really hit the ground running. They've taken on so much work, and I thought, oh yes, finally. And then we've just taken on more clients, so I'm back to where I was. And so that's my frustration. I just can't seem to push forward with the things I want to do.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of things to mention on, Jackie. I think the reason for doing this quarterly dynamics or 6 weekly is getting into a rhythm. We'll talk about this in a minute. Getting into a rhythm of doing it is really important, not just for the habit side of it, but it's about putting time in your calendar. If the first Monday morning of every month is when you do your review, if your first Tuesday in the quarter is when you sit down and go through your actions, it's about setting those appointments with yourself in your calendar. And for some of us, that might be easier. And actually working from home doesn't make it easier. That's the thing I've found, because everything else gets in the way. And what I used to, even when I had an office for the construction business, what you've got to find an easy way of doing it. So what we used to do is we used to say the first, I forgot what it was, I think it's Thursday in the month would be our meeting and review session. And we had a particular restaurant that we used to love going to in Mansfield. It was a Thai restaurant. And 4 or 5 of us used to go, and we used to have dinner. We used to arrange with the restaurant to have a quadruple sized table so we could lay notes out, and we would literally have a Thai meal. The notes weren't always that clean, I hasten to add, but we'd lay our notes out on the table, and we found it easier to do that because we were going to have lunch anyway, so let's just extend the lunch. Let's go somewhere nice. Let's treat ourselves. Let's celebrate the fact that we're doing it. But we did it. We even got to the point where they had a flip chart board in the back, and we used to bring our flip chart out, and we used to keep it behind the counter for us. It's finding ways that work for you, but certainly it's that regularity and finding the time to do it. And that 30 minutes, that hour, that half day, that's when it comes to this. How much money will doing that save you? How much money will it make you, and what kind of impact will it have? And I can assure you from my own experience, if you get into that rhythm, the way you will get out of the chaos and the way you'll get the handle on it will be a great thing, and it'll make a massive impact. And you think, why on earth didn't I do this before? And when I used to do turnaround work, I always used to ask 2 questions. First one I won't bore you with, but the second one is, when was your last meeting? And the businesses that were really struggling always said, oh, we don't have time for meetings. We don't have time for reviewing stuff like that. You've got to make the time. Absolutely. So make the time. Definitely. Anybody got any final question before we move on to the slides? I've got you all on my other slide. Yeah.
It's Asga.
Asga, that's it. Yeah. I want to say Asga for some reason, but Asga, yeah.
It's an R missing on there for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, well, we've been very lucky over this lockdown. We've had phenomenal growth in the business. We're an online retailer, personalized gifts. and the last 12 months have just been crazy for us. And I think one of the nice things, just taking the hour out over the last 6 weeks, has been able to review what we're doing, and we've actually forgotten the growth plans that we had before the lockdown, because we just kept on growing and growing, growing. And I think sitting here today, just think, well, we did have a growth plan, but it's in the dust somewhere. I think we need to bring it out again,
dust it off, definitely.
Yeah, and re-look at it. Otherwise, I think, because you're having success, but because you're looking for bigger success, you forget what you were looking for. And I think we've been in a very fortunate position. But the review bit, I think, I'd be honest, I'd forgotten about it.
Yeah.
Because we've been that busy.
It's interesting you say that, because I have a success curve that I draw, and I have a bit of a Death Valley dip, and I have a line of success and then a sort of a plateau. And I believe that for most businesses, being on that line of success is the most dangerous place to be, because that's when complacency, that's when busyness gets in the way of business. And you do need, that's why I think this is really, really important. Even when you're mega successful, the most successful businesses in the world do these reviews, set the actions, do everything that we're talking about more regularly. They don't do it less regularly because they're busy. They do it more regularly because they know the importance of keeping the business on track and dusting those plans out. And I'm glad you said that, because that leads on to the next one about realigning. You need to, plans shouldn't be something that are kept in filing cabinets and need dusting off. They should be something that we realign to. And that's why in the previous sessions we talked about mission and vision. Does this, where I'm going to, get me to that growth plan? And as you mentioned there, you've got that. I'm glad you've taken the hour out, and and you'll find other ways of doing that, moving forward. And that's one of the reasons I think mastermind groups are so great, be able to do these kind of things. But it's about looking and making sure that where you're going, is it actually heading in the right direction? Because you can be going that way, but if your plans say that way, having motion and having movement is okay, but what if it's in the wrong way? So make sure it's getting you towards that growth plan and that mission and that vision as well. If you remember, the mission is the plan of how we're going to get there, the step by steps. So really important. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry for looking over, but on my other iPad screen. So the other thing is as well, it's about making decisions. And when you look at those actions, when you look at those quarterly dynamics of what do we need to know, what do we need to do, what do we need to monitor, who's going to do it and by when, is it aligning us with our mission, our vision, our growth plans, as Guy said there? It helps us make better decisions. And most of the problems that you will have as a business will be because either you're not making decisions or that you're making the wrong decisions. So the important thing to do is to make sure that you're making the decisions on a quarterly basis. You're reviewing those decisions, okay? And you're making great decisions. And of course, as it says there, keep up the tempo. I put that quote there from Emerson: nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. It's important to keep that rhythm. And sometimes that enthusiasm, as Tom said there, can be all pent up like a greyhound in the box waiting to get out, and it can be a bit overwhelming. And the thing I would answer to that, and I think I mentioned it last time, if you've got something that feels so amazing, but when you do your review, when you look at the motion, it just feels a little bit overwhelming, and you think that you've got easier steps and more important steps to take, don't say no to it. Just put it in your not now box. Just take the post-it note and say, that's why I've got the time thing at the bottom. Just say, that's not a thing to do this week. That's a thing to do next month. That's a thing to do in 2 months' time. That's why these post-it notes with the time at the bottom allows you to put things into some kind of order. And if you remember, we did the strategic planning where you set your 90 days. You don't want everything to be done in the first week. We want to make sure we're setting it out in priority. So keep the dynamics up there. So thinking about your notes, I want you to grab some paper, grab your post-it notes, whatever it is, and I want you to think about the quarter ahead. As we're holding this, we're at the end of March, and we're heading into the calendar-based quarter two. What are the priorities for quarter two? Okay. What are the things that you know you need to do in the quarter? Perhaps for Tom and for other people that have so much to be working on, what are your priorities for the month ahead? What are your priorities for the next 6 weeks? But just list down as many priority actions. What's important to you? Because the nice to do's are okay, but what are the most important things to do? And then I want you to think about those actions. Where do they fit with where you're going? Where do they fit with your year-end goals? Okay. And we've talked about KPIs already. What KPIs perhaps need setting to make sure that those actions are on track? So just brainstorm stuff down. Write down as many things as you can think of. If you can't think of too many, don't worry. Just write the 1 or 2 things. If you've got just one thing to work on, great. There's a whole book on working on the one thing. So jot some things down. What are your priorities for quarter two? What are your priorities for the month ahead? Is it to set time to actually review your actions? Is it to set that rhythm of these dynamic quarterly, 6-weekly reviews? Or more frequently, initially, if you're just coming out the gate?
Can I put delegate more?
Yeah. But delegate more, what's the action behind that?
Well, do you know, you said about like, you don't want to get everything done in the first 90 days. The problem I have is I want to.
Yep.
And then the other thing is, I think you said it earlier, which really resonated with me. Is it worth my time and my wage? And the problem I'll admit, in the past, I've probably been a bit of a micromanager. I've always had the attitude, well, I'll do it myself because they're not going to do it right.
Yep.
So one of the big things that I need to do is I need to let go, and I need to let my manager manage. Yep. And I also need to delegate and give them the responsibility of delegating.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how I'd communicate that any better, but for me, that's a big must for me.
Yeah. So from an actions point of view, the core action would be to delegate, and then think about, like I did with the postcards and sending out the invites, what's the next thing? So the next thing might be to do a list of things that you can delegate, which are perhaps lower skill and lower fun. Then you might look at the resources that you've got, identify the people or identify the resources. Then the other action would be to sit down with them and to empower them, give them responsibilities, define what the authority levels are, define the boundaries by which they can play with. Okay? And it's about just breaking it down into those smaller actions, those smaller steps to make that priority action start. So that's a great thing. That's what I want you all to do, to think about. Because if you just look at the word delegate, okay, great, I'm going to go out there and delegate. Just like my postcards, without the design, without the order in the cards, nothing's going to go out. So break it down into those smaller steps and say, okay, when am I going to finish that delegation? That's what I mean by quarter two priorities. When am I going to finish it? When is it going to be done by? And then you can set the smaller actions to wind it back. And then quarterly, or whenever it is, review, did the delegation work? What's gone right with it? What's not gone so right with it? Yeah. You notice I never say what's gone wrong with it. It's always not what's gone not so right with it, because that encourages you to push the boundaries and allow people to make mistakes, allow people to perhaps not be as good as you. Nobody can sweep like I can. Trust me. When I used to have a stall, nobody sweeps up like I can. But is that a good use of my time as the MD in a construction business, sweeping the store floor? Absolutely not. So yeah, good question. Good point. And that comes on to resources. Set resources up, set deadlines. Yeah, it might be, Tom, from your point of view, is that yes, you can delegate, but perhaps what you need to do is have them shadow somebody for some time doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might need to watch it. They might need to do some of the training that you've done. Perhaps they need to go and watch a recording of a webinar that you want if you want them to do part of it. So what other resources can you bring in to get people up to speed as well? And then make sure that that vision and mission I asked you right at the beginning, because if the actions are going to keep momentum, they have got to feel that they're going somewhere. If people have no idea where they're heading, then they're not going to step up, they're not going to perform. So you need to make sure you do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to the rest of the slides, I'm conscious we've got a couple of minutes left. We're nearly at the end of these. Think about big decisions. You know, these on your post-it notes here, what I'd like you to do is go through the post-it notes, go through the things that you've written and think about the decisions. What are the big decisions that you need to make? You know, we saw some things in the chat, you know, quite big things happening. What are the big decisions that need to be made to help you keep the momentum through that plan? And then finally, how are you going to celebrate it? Is it going to be Cream Cake Friday? You know, is it going to be, and I'm using things that don't involve going out, but of course soon we're going to be able to, you know, is it Deliveroo, McDonald's or something like that? I don't know. We always used to love going to McDonald's as well for the small celebrations. You can't beat a McDonald's breakfast, veggie or not, to celebrate something happening in the week. So how will you celebrate? Think about those little things that you can celebrate. Just a very quick one here. Sailing ships, that is actually a real book. How to avoid huge ships. Huge ships are disruptions. We cannot do anything about the current disruption we're in. We're in it, it's coming our way. There will be something else coming our way in the years to come. Hopefully not as bad as what we're in at the moment. But we need to be like sailing ships. We need to be looking at the way the wind's blowing. We need to be looking very quickly at the conditions in front of us and not be that huge tanker that can't shift. We need to be continually adjusting our the way that we're doing things, the way that we're crewing our ship, the speed that we're at, the wind that we're at. So think about yourself as a little sailing ship, very easy to shift and change. And think about Lego. I love the Lego story. Lego has been around for so long, yet it was 90s, they were about to go bust. And then they did something quite innovative. They did Lego Movie. Now, I'm not a Lego Movie fan at all. I hate the Lego movies, but that changed the whole Lego model. And they did things and they changed things and they reviewed things. If you Google the Lego transformation, it's incredible. It's an incredible story. There's lots of case studies on it. But they, despite the size of their organization, they adopted that sailing ship format. They didn't just keep going the same way. They kept things moving and they kept shifting and changing. And just to finish off on, there are always things that will get in the way. Probably is you, probably is your team. There's a few new ones on there: fear of success, fear of failure, lack of enthusiasm, lack of a plan, chaos and time. Always, when you're doing your quarterly plans or your 6 weekly reviews, whatever it is, the other thing to think about is what's getting in the way. Every review, don't be frightened of thinking, don't be frightened of asking your team, what's getting in the way of success? What's getting in the way of our plans? And sometimes it's very important, I put that one on there, the fear of success. Some people are actually more fearful of actually doing well. Jackie, you've mentioned about getting all those new clients in, and you know, people sometimes are very fearful of, I won't be able to cope, I won't be able to handle it, I won't be able to cope with all the clients that I've got coming in. So sometimes the fear of success is more paralyzing than the fear of failure. So when you're doing your reviews, when you're looking at your motion, if motion is stalling, if motion is stopping, look at what is getting in the way, because action does change things. I've saved the best to last. Action is everything. Dynamics is everything. Think about that word dynamic. Energy that moves things forward and produces motion. When you get to the legacy part of your business, and some of you are at that point, when you get to that legacy, everything that you've been doing so far has an inertia that keeps that momentum going. It produces motion of its own, but it's got to keep moving. Just conscious here, I'm not going to go through that slide. I've done that one before. Don't forget, share the love, share the reason, be passionate, be enthusiastic about your plan. Show people the steps. And as we're on the last one here, remember, we need, as part of legacy, if we're going to leave a business, if we're going to have a business that continues without our significant input or without us at all, we need to make sure we've got ongoing adaptation. We need to make sure we have a continuance plan, both in our business and in the community. And most importantly, we need to be dynamic. Leave your mark, leave your legacy. And ask yourself that question. What are you doing to make things better? Now, I normally give you 3 actions. I'm not going to give you 3 actions. But what I am going to ask you to do is, in the chat box, what I'd love you to do is share with me. I'm going to have to put my iPad in. My battery's about to go flat. Share with me, what is that one thing? What is the next step that you're going to do after this series has been done? What's the big easies we're talking about with Tom? Put it into the chat box and let me know. And I'm happy. I've got another 10 minutes before I have to jump off. Yeah, if there's any questions you've got, please take yourself off of mute. I'm happy to go through any questions or just walk through anything that you want to talk through. But just type in the chat box what one thing you're going to do next. Anybody got a question, a comment, something you want to run through? Hazel looks very thoughtful. That tumbleweed moment right at the end that you always get. Type in the chat box. What is it you're going to do? So 6 weeks review. Let's read these here. Yeah, review our plans again. Yeah, dust them down. Finalists in the Lincolnshire Live Awards. Ooh, fingers crossed. Yeah, so we'll all be. Have we still got a chance to vote, Jackie, or is that time gone now?
I don't think it's a voting thing. I think.
Oh, is it not? Oh, that's a shame.
Decided, but yeah, I'm quite excited. It should have been in October last year, but it's been delayed, obviously. So it's online tonight. So
we all need to keep an eye, and when the award comes through, we need to share some love and some affection of those awards on social media later on. Then that'd be great. Review plans with staff, get all involved. Yeah, as we talked about before, really important. Hazel, absolutely, get everybody involved. Rediscover my love for business. Yeah, and I think 2 things can get in the way there, Joe. I think sometimes the love for the business is about being weary, and sometimes that causes us to fall out of love with our business. But I think what Tom was saying as well there, I found that feeling of overwhelm becomes so obsessive about you've got so much to do, that also causes you to fall out of love with your business. So yeah, I think we all need to find that little bit of love and celebrate the little things. Say, you know, cream cakes, McDonald's breakfast, whatever it is. David, make sure new partners are aligned with vision. Yeah, make sure it's clear. Make sure they're aligned with it. And bear in mind, the vision should be something that very rarely changes. I think Jim Collins writes in a book, Great by Choice, that the most successful businesses over the last 100 years change their vision of what they want to achieve and where they're going by less than 10% over a 30-year period. So we don't have to make, if you're making big changes to your vision, it's not the right vision, and we need to get a vision which is almost cast in stone. Yeah, Tom, time management, stick to the 90-day plan. Remember my vision, enjoy the challenge. Yeah. Okay, anybody want to take themselves off of mute? Anybody got anything else they want to ask? I know some of you have got to drop off from the time we've done. Again, if you want any topics In future webinars, please reach out to the productivity program. Let them know what you would like covering. I'm sure they're more than happy to cover other topics with various people, not just myself. And I really encourage you to use your notes, use your post-it notes, go out there and take actions. And please connect with me on social media. Let me know how you're doing. Let the productivity program know the successes that you're achieving by going through all of the webinars that you've been on. And thank you very much, all of you, for engaging and taking part. And I look forward to seeing all the success that you all have as well. And thanks, Frank. And yeah, I'll catch up with you all soon. I'll end it now. Bye for now.
Yes.
Bye.